nothing in the United States Constitution that prevents somebody from being investigated criminally or prosecuted, whether a candidate for president or being imprisoned while they are president. If Trump ends up in jail and somehow still manages to win the election, then there are going to be a couple different questions that come up. One is whether or not a judge would allow Trump, in a sense, to have his sentence suspended. That would simply allow Trump to sort of be out and about while he's president. But the second possibility is there could be a third impeachment of Donald Trump. And the third impeachment of Donald Trump would be based on the fact that he had committed all these other crimes while he was president the last time, for which he's not yet been impeached. And then Trump could be tossed out of office for that.
Well, let's talk to Michael Gerhardt. Michael is professor at the University of North Carolina's Law School. And Michael, you focus on constitutional conflicts between presidents and Congress. So you're the perfect person to talk to right now. And you also testified in the Trump and Clinton impeachment proceedings. Now, President Trump said today, hey, I'm not guilty to the 4 serious charges. What do you make of the framing of this particular indictment, and what do you think? I think the special counsel will have to do in order to convince people that this is constitutional and this is right.
Well, thank you first for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I can give you some idea of how the indictment is framed. I think one of the critical things to keep in mind is that Donald Trump's defense is aimed purely at his base. It has nothing to do with the law and very little to do with the indictments. So he's just making political arguments and not any legal ones. In fact, he's not made any legal case yet. The special counsel, Jack Smith, has framed the indictment as a lawyer would frame it. So it's a legal event. And that legal framework, which Smith put together, essentially has cornered Trump by identifying a series of misconduct that clearly breach the federal criminal law. And each indictment is backed by considerable evidence, which is credible, and all coming either from Trump's mouth or Republican allies. So the indictments altogether, Trump has actually been indicted now for nearly 80 felonies. And that's a number that ought to concern any voter in the United States. But Smith has been a part of that team that's indicting Trump, and the number of crimes that Smith is charging Trump with is kind of mind-boggling, and the evidence backing it up is equally sort of amazing.
And of all the conflicts that you've studied between presidents and Congress and the separation of powers, where is this in the league table?
Well, this certainly is almost going to stand by itself. We've had presidents who've skirted the law. We've had presidents who've lied to the American public. But we haven't had presidents who lie all the time. And we haven't had presidents who sort of violate the law all the time. And this is the picture that's emerging of Trump. He conducted himself in a way that was often on the wrong side of the law. And as Jack Smith sort of depicts in these most recent indictments, Trump was being told what the law was. Trump was being told what the facts were. He had lost the election, and he ignored the facts, and he ignored the law, and then tried to break the law by keeping himself in power. And so this is the first time in American history where a president of the United States has actually attacked his own government and attacked the foundation of our democracy.
We keep hearing here, Michael, analysis, which basically says that Donald Trump, he's a one-off. We've not seen this before, yes, and he could very well be able to campaign and even become president from behind bars. Is that really true?
Yes, it is. There's nothing in the United States Constitution that prevents somebody from being investigated criminally or prosecuted, whether a candidate for president or being imprisoned while they are president. If Trump ends up in jail and somehow still manages to win the election, then there are going to be a couple different questions that come up. One is whether or not a judge would allow Trump, in a sense, to have his sentence suspended. That would simply allow Trump to sort of be out and about while he's president. But the second possibility is there could be a third impeachment of Donald Trump. And the third impeachment of Donald Trump would be based on the fact that he had committed all these other crimes while he was president the last time, for which he's not yet been impeached. And then Trump could be tossed out of office for that. There's an argument also under a different amendment to the U.S. Constitution that provides for temporary presidential leadership if the current occupant is disabled. But that part of the Constitution is mostly about physical and mental impairment. It's not about actually being constrained in a prison.
And Michael, some of our listeners are complaining about whataboutery. You may have heard some of the conversation I had with Larry Elder, a 2024 presidential candidate, and he was talking about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden with classified documents, and Hunter Biden under indictment. How credible are those comparisons?
They are completely irrelevant in a court of law. Those are political appeals. Those excite the base, but they have no legal significance. To put it a different way, whatever crimes Joe Biden and Hunter Biden might have committed do not make Donald Trump innocent. They do not erase Donald Trump's criminality. So Trump can talk all day long about the Bidens. He calls them the Biden crime family. That's has a political kind of resonance to it. But legally, Trump has to be accountable for what he himself did. Doesn't matter if I break into a bank and I try and rob it, it doesn't matter what anybody else has done with regard to any other bank. I have to be held accountable for my criminal misconduct. And in our country, like in your country, the rule of law is critical. It's foundational to democracy. And that means the rule of law applies to everybody, no matter how powerful, and that includes Donald Trump.
And there's quite a bit of evidence that's out there already of Donald Trump trying to get a few more thousand votes from, was it Brad Raffensperger over in Georgia? And you've even heard from Mike Pence saying, Donald Trump tried to put himself ahead of the Constitution, and nobody who does that should ever be president of this country. The question is what they will say in a trial. How concerned are you that they will not be as good as their word or as what they've said before for political reasons or through fear?
Well, in a trial, William Barr or others might not even be called, because what they're saying now, what Barr and others are saying now, that's just for journalism and that's for public consumption. But the testimony anybody would give in the trial has to be about the crimes that are charged in the indictment. So presumably, witnesses that would be called forth, by the way, all those witnesses are Republicans.
Yes.
Not a single Democrat among them. And Trump hasn't explained that. In other words, the people charging Trump with misconduct, the eyewitnesses, are all people he hired or his Republican allies. That just makes their statements all the more credible. I think that would allow those witnesses to be a little more, I wouldn't say relaxed, but a little more certain when they come into court that they're going to be believed. And they will simply relate the conversations they've had with Trump or any other documentation they have with Trump. And I think their testimony alone, each person's testimony alone, and then all that testimony together is going to be overwhelming as far as Trump is concerned. When a man has been indicted for nearly 80 felonies, the odds are quite good he's going to be convicted of at least one.
All right, Michael Gerhardt, professor at the University of North Carolina's Law School, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio.